She believed one public insult would prove her power. One splash of wine would remind the world who belonged at the top and who did not. But in that glittering ballroom, surrounded by cameras and applause, Natalie Brooks made a mistake that would erase everything she thought she owned. In less than 10 minutes, an $800 million empire collapsed. Her marriage shattered, and a secret she never bothered to uncover turned her triumph into humiliation. What she didn't know was that the quiet man she destroyed that night was the one holding her entire future in his hands. That night was supposed to crown Natalie Brooks. The ballroom overlooking Manhattan shimmered like a promise finally kept. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors. The air smelled of champagne, ambition, and money that had already decided where it would sleep tonight. Reporters crowded near the stage. Investors whispered in low, confident voices. Every camera in the room was angled toward one woman. Natalie Brooks stood at the podium, her posture flawless, her silver gown catching every flash of light. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times. The speech, the smile, the controlled humility that powerful people learn to wear like armor. Tonight, her company Brooks Urban Design was finalizing an $800 million urban renewal contract. The deal would redefine the skyline and secure her place among the most influential executives in the country. This was the night she believed proved everything she had sacrificed was worth it. At a table near the back of the room, a man sat quietly. Ethan Brooks wore a plain navy suit, no logos, no tailored excess. He looked like someone who belonged anywhere and nowhere at the same time. His hands were folded calmly in front of him as he watched Natalie accept applause that rolled through the room like thunder. For years, Ethan had stood behind the scenes. He had watched her grow from restless ambition to controlled authority. He had never asked to stand beside her in public. He had learned early that Natalie's world rewarded silence from men like him. To Natalie, Ethan was dependable but invisible. A husband who supported her stability, not her power. A man who stayed home while she chased a future too bright for anyone else to stand in its shadow. When the presenter announced that the signing ceremony would begin shortly, Natalie's smile widened. She stepped down from the stage accepting congratulations, shaking hands floating on admiration. That was when she noticed Ethan standing in her path. He held a glass of champagne, untouched. His voice was soft, almost lost beneath the music and chatter. "I'm proud of you, Nat," he said. "You worked hard for this." Her smile froze for half a second. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp with irritation masked as surprise. "I wanted to see you sign," he replied. "I wanted to be here with you." She glanced around. A few executives had noticed. Curious eyes lingered. "This is a corporate event," she said quickly. "You shouldn't be interrupting." "I'm not interrupting," Ethan said. "I just wanted a moment." Her jaw tightened. She leaned closer, lowering her voice, but the tension in her tone cut through the music. "These people don't live in your world, Ethan. They make billion-dollar decisions. You wouldn't understand." A server paused mid-step. Someone nearby stopped laughing. Ethan looked at her carefully as if trying to recognize the woman in front of him. "I'm not trying to embarrass you," he said quietly. "I just wanted to congratulate my wife." Something inside Natalie snapped. Years of pressure, ego, and resentment boiled over in a single breath. "You embarrass yourself just by standing here," she said. "Look at you. You don't belong in my circle." A hush spread through the room. "You reek of mediocrity," she continued, her voice rising. "You have no class, no ambition. These people carry power. You carry nothing." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Natalie lifted her glass. "Maybe this will help you remember your place." The red wine splashed across Ethan's face in a cold, deliberate arc. It soaked his collar and dripped onto the marble floor, staining the night with silence. Cameras clicked instantly. Someone gasped. No one moved. Ethan didn't flinch. He stood there, wine sliding down his jaw, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a handkerchief, and wiped his face with careful precision. Then he looked at her. His voice was calm, too calm. "Learn to stay within your circle," Natalie said coldly. Ethan said nothing. He turned and walked away. The echo of his footsteps followed him to the exit. No shouting, no confrontation. Just a quiet dignity that unsettled the room more than any outburst could have. Natalie watched him go, her heart pounding with adrenaline and something dangerously close to triumph. Someone muttered that it was brutal. Natalie ignored it. She tossed the empty glass onto a passing tray and straightened her dress. "Let's move on," she said with a laugh that came a second too late. "My husband gets emotional." The presenter hesitated, then nodded and called everyone back to attention. Minutes later, Natalie stood at the signing table. The folder lay open before her, thick with documents that represented everything she had worked toward. The applause returned, louder now, as if the room had collectively decided to forget what it had just witnessed. "Ms. Brooks," the presenter said, handing her the pen. "It's an honor." Natalie wrapped her fingers around the pen. Her name waited at the bottom of the page. Just as she leaned forward to sign, a man in a charcoal suit hurried toward the stage. He spoke urgently to the presenter, his face draining of color. The presenter froze. "I'm sorry," he said into the microphone. "We've just received an order from executive leadership." Natalie frowned. "What order?" "The signing is suspended," the man said. "Effective immediately." The word suspended seemed to hang in the air. "That's impossible," Natalie said sharply. "There must be a mistake." The representative from Blackridge Capital closed his folder without meeting her eyes. "I'm afraid not," he said. "We've been instructed to withdraw." The applause died. Whispers spread like wildfire. Investors began to stand. Some avoided her gaze. Others stared openly, curiosity mixing with pity. Natalie's hand trembled. "We had an agreement," she said. "You can't just walk away." The man was already leaving. Cameras flashed faster now, capturing every second of her confusion. The contract lay open, unsigned. Outside, the city lights glowed indifferently. Ethan stood alone beneath the street lamps, the dried stain of wine still visible on his collar. His phone buzzed with messages from inside the building. He didn't look at them. Inside the ballroom, Natalie stood frozen as the room emptied around her. For the first time that night, the silence felt louder than applause. And somewhere between the echo of Ethan's footsteps and the abandoned signature line, Natalie Brooks felt something unfamiliar begin to settle in her chest. Fear. Do you think Ethan was right to walk away without saying a word, yes or no? Natalie did not remember leaving the ballroom. She remembered the lights, the heat of the cameras, the pen slipping from her fingers. Then nothing but the sound of her own breathing, sharp and uneven, as if the air itself had turned against her. By the time she was escorted out into the night, the celebration inside had already dissolved into whispers and headlines. Black sedans lined the curb. Reporters shouted questions she could not answer. Someone pushed a phone toward her face, the screen already playing a slowed-down clip of red wine arcing through the air, captured from 3 different angles. She turned away. Inside the car, her hands shook uncontrollably. Her assistant sat beside her, pale and silent, refreshing his phone every few seconds. "It's everywhere," he said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "They're saying the contract was pulled because of what happened." Natalie closed her eyes. "That's ridiculous." Another notification chimed, then another, then dozens more. Blackridge Capital suspends $800 million deal minutes before signing. CEO under fire after public humiliation of husband. Viral footage raises questions about leadership and character. Her stomach dropped. "No," she murmured. "This isn't happening." The car stopped outside her penthouse. The city looked the same as it always had, glittering and indifferent. Natalie stepped out, heels unsteady, dignity unraveling with every step. Inside, the silence was suffocating. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her clutch on the counter, and sank onto the couch without turning on the lights. The room still smelled faintly of the perfume she had sprayed that morning, confident, unstoppable, certain the world would bow to her by nightfall. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an investor she had known for years. "We need to talk. This changes everything." Her breath caught. She scrolled. More messages, some asking for clarification, others offering condolences, a few bluntly stating they were pulling out. She opened social media despite herself. The video was everywhere. The moment slowed down, replayed, dissected, her words subtitled in bold white text. The wine froze in midair like a weapon. She threw wine at her husband at his own signing. Natalie dropped the phone. For the first time since she could remember, she felt completely powerless. Across town, Ethan Brooks sat alone in a quiet apartment few people even knew existed. He had taken off his jacket but left the shirt on, the stain on the collar still visible. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring out the window at the city he had helped shape without ever attaching his name to it. His phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. Messages from board members, from legal counsel, from Blackridge executives waiting for confirmation. He didn't answer immediately. He thought about Natalie as she used to be. The woman who had once sat on the floor of their first apartment, sketching buildings on napkins, eyes lit with ideas bigger than the room they lived in. He thought about the nights he stayed up arranging introductions, securing quiet investments, making sure doors opened just wide enough for her to walk through, believing she had forced them open herself. He had told himself it was love. At some point, it had become something else. Ethan picked up the phone and sent a single message: proceed. By morning, the fallout was undeniable. Natalie woke to the sound of her phone vibrating nonstop. Headlines stacked on top of each other. Analysts speculated. Commentators dissected her tone, her posture, her choice of words. Some defended her, many did not. By noon, Brooks' urban design stock had plummeted. Meetings were canceled. Calls went unanswered. Her assistant finally said what neither of them wanted to admit. "They think the funding was personal," he said carefully. "They think Blackridge was connected to your husband." Natalie froze. "What do you mean connected?" "They think he had influence." Her mind raced. Ethan had always been quiet, always present but never demanding. She had assumed his calm was a lack of ambition, his silence proof of insignificance. The truth began to form, terrifying in its simplicity. She grabbed her coat. The drive to Ethan's place felt longer than usual. The city blurred past, familiar streets suddenly foreign. She rehearsed what she would say, apologies colliding with justifications, fear clawing its way into every thought. When she knocked, the door opened almost immediately. Ethan stood there, expression unreadable. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. He stepped aside without a word. Inside, the apartment was spare and immaculate. No trophies, no reminders of power, just clean lines and quiet control. Natalie's composure cracked the moment the door closed behind her. "Everything went wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "The contract, the investors, all of it. I don't understand." Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He said nothing. She took a step closer. "If this is about last night, I can explain. I was under pressure. I said things I didn't mean." "You meant them," he said calmly. The words landed harder than any shout. She shook her head. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," he replied. "There's a difference." Natalie swallowed. "You did this," she said slowly. "You pulled the funding." Ethan met her eyes. Blackridge doesn't invest in arrogance, and it doesn't support people who humiliate their partners for applause. Her knees felt weak. "I built that company," she said, desperate. "I earned that deal. I built the foundation," he said quietly. "Every investor, every introduction, every check that arrived when you needed it most, all of it came through me." The room spun. She remembered the early years, the unexplained meetings, the sudden opportunities that arrived just when she thought she might fail. She had called it luck, timing, destiny. It had been him. Tears streamed down her face. "Please," she whispered, "let me fix this." Ethan shook his head once. "You can't fix what you revealed." "I love you," she said, grabbing his arm. He gently pulled away. "You loved what I gave you, not me." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. "We can start over," she said. "I'll step away from the company. I'll do anything." Ethan's voice remained steady. "You can't start over something you destroyed publicly." He walked to the kitchen, picked up an empty glass, and set it in the sink with deliberate calm. "There's something you should know," he continued. "Everything I own is protected by an irrevocable trust I created before we married. You will never have access to it, not through divorce, not through court." Her breath hitched. "You're divorcing me." "I already called my lawyer," he said. Natalie fell to her knees. "I can't do this alone," she whispered. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "You already are." He turned and walked down the hall, closing the door behind him. Natalie remained on the floor as sunlight crept through the window, illuminating a glass of water untouched on the table. For the first time, she understood what it felt like when even forgiveness leaves the room. Do you feel any sympathy for Natalie at this point in the story? Yes or no? Natalie did not leave Ethan's apartment that morning with anger. She left with silence. The city outside looked unchanged, but she felt as though she had stepped into a world where nothing would ever recognize her again. For days after, she disappeared from public view. No interviews, no statements, no carefully worded apologies drafted by public relations teams. Brooks' urban design operated in survival mode, while its CEO stayed hidden behind closed curtains, watching her empire shrink headline by headline. At first, Natalie wanted to fight. She called attorneys. She called advisors. She even called old allies who had once sworn loyalty. Most did not answer. Those who did spoke carefully, distantly, as if proximity to her might stain them. Then came the final blow. The board of Brooks' urban design requested her resignation. Not demanded, requested. The politeness hurt more than an outright attack. Natalie signed the letter the same night. For the first time in her adult life, she woke up without a schedule, without power, without anyone asking her for decisions. The quiet was unbearable. It forced her to think. She replayed the moment in the ballroom again and again. Not the wine, not the cameras, but Ethan's eyes, the calm in them, the disappointment she had mistaken for weakness. Weeks passed. Natalie moved out of the penthouse and into a small apartment across the river. It was clean, modest, unimpressive, exactly the kind of place she once would have mocked without thinking. She began volunteering at a community redevelopment center, originally out of obligation, then habit, then something closer to purpose. She sat with families displaced by construction projects she once would have approved without reading the fine print. She listened. For the first time in years, she listened without planning how to speak next. Ethan heard about it indirectly. Black Ridge Capital had weathered the storm easily. If anything, public trust in the firm had grown. Investors praised its values. The message was clear. Character mattered. Ethan continued his work quietly, funding projects that never bore his name. He avoided places Natalie might be, not out of resentment, but because some wounds needed space to heal properly. One evening, months later, he received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. I do not expect forgiveness. I am not asking for anything. I only want you to know that I finally see what I destroyed. I am trying to become someone who would never do that again. Not for you, for myself. Ethan folded the note carefully and placed it back in the envelope. He did not respond. Not yet. Another 6 months passed. The media had long since moved on. Natalie Brooks was now a cautionary tale occasionally referenced in leadership panels and business schools. Ethan Brooks remained a mystery few could define. One afternoon, Ethan attended the opening of a small public housing project on the outskirts of the city. No press, no ceremony, just families receiving keys. As he turned to leave, he saw her. Natalie stood near the entrance, wearing simple clothes, her hair pulled back. She was helping a woman translate a form, her voice patient, her posture unguarded. She noticed him at the same moment. For a second, neither moved. Then Natalie nodded once, respectfully. She did not approach. She did not speak. She returned to what she was doing. Ethan watched quietly. There was no performance, no audience, no desperation, just humility. He left without interrupting, but something shifted. A week later, Ethan called her. Natalie stared at the phone when she saw his name. Her hands shook as she answered. I'm not calling to revisit the past, Ethan said calmly. I just want to have coffee, if you're willing. She swallowed. Yes. They met in a small cafe far from cameras and expectations. No wine, no applause, just two people sitting across from each other. Natalie spoke first. I don't deserve your time, she said, but I appreciate it. Ethan nodded. I didn't come to punish you. I came to understand. She told him everything. About the fall, the work, the loneliness. The realization that ambition without humanity had hollowed her out. I thought power made me untouchable, she said. It only made me blind. Ethan listened. I never wanted credit, he said finally. I wanted partnership, respect. I know, Natalie said softly. And I failed. They sat in silence for a moment. I'm not asking you to come back, she added. I know some things can't be rebuilt. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. Some things can, he said, if both people are willing to start differently. Natalie's breath caught. What does that mean? It means no secrets, Ethan replied. No shadows, no pedestal, and no circles that exclude. Tears filled her eyes. She nodded. Yes. They did not rush. They rebuilt slowly, carefully, with honesty that sometimes hurt and conversations that sometimes lasted until dawn. Natalie did not return to corporate leadership. She found fulfillment in work that required presence, not applause. Ethan did not reclaim control. He shared it. A year later, they stood together at a modest ceremony announcing a new nonprofit initiative focused on ethical urban development. No cameras were invited. The project spoke for itself. As the sun set behind them, Natalie reached for Ethan's hand. Thank you, she said, for walking away when I needed to learn. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for becoming someone worth walking back to. Love had not saved them. Growth had, respect had, and humility had done what power never could. Now let me ask you, how did this story make you feel? And what do you think about the choices both Natalie and Ethan made? If you enjoyed this story, please comment below and let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell next to the subscribe button so you never miss a new story. Tell us which country you are watching from and share this story with someone who might need it today.